4 games this weekend, 4, relatively speaking, pretty lopsided games this weekend. And that included, Notre Dame taking down Indiana. All of the home teams won. There were no surprises there. I mean, they were all projected to win. None of them were really that competitive, although I thought SMU had a chance early on to kind of make things interesting against Penn State. Clemson hung in there against Texas.
Clemson was, in terms of game flow, Clemson was the closest, even though Indiana was the closest on the scoreboard. But every home team and favorite won and covered. So I guess our picks were okay for last week.
No, well, my picks were terrible, but that's
well, my picks were okay.
I'll let you speak on our behalf because I've said a lot of stupid stuff on this show.
Well, me too.
Over this last,
I did happen to make some coin over the weekend on some of those games.
I was over, but you know what? I'm full. My heart is full in holiday cheer. I guess we'll just pivot to the Christmas Day NFL games. There's been a lot of talk about, and again, you heard the SEC talking point came back up this weekend, and to me, it's just so tiring because I think that when you look at it, I think they got it right. Like these people crying about Alabama and Ole Miss, especially Alabama, like you lost to a 6-win Vanderbilt team. You got blown out by a terrible Oklahoma team. Like to me, that's like conversation over. Like if you just want to put together like a television program that you're most interested in watching, then yeah, just take the teams that have recruited the best over the last 3 or 4 years and put them on the field together. And then it's an invitational and we can do this hypothetical thing. I think the best thing about this regular season, the best thing about this format is that, you know what? Hey, Indiana, you went 11-1 and played a Big Ten schedule, although it was lighter. But, to me, I think you still get credit for blowing out most of the teams you played. Let's go settle it on the field. Let's go see if you can hang with a Notre Dame. And guess what? They couldn't, mostly because Curt Cignetti turned into a pumpkin in that game. But this, to me, I don't have an issue with how it played out because, one, I think it's going to make for better. What do we always talk about with the NCAA tournament? Like the opening round upsets are amazing. But then when you get into that second weekend or you get into Sunday, you get into the second weekend, I don't like a lot of times those matchups, I think, suffer for it, as fun as that opening weekend can be. The best 4 teams that played this weekend moved on. And I think we're going to get 4 pretty good games between New Year's Eve and New Year's Day.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to change the format probably in a few years or maybe even next year where, the buys don't go to necessarily conference champions. It'll just be the top 4 ranked teams. And then a few years, I think, and hopefully we get to 16 teams in this playoff. But yeah, I mean, there have been blowouts in the 14 playoff most years. The last couple of years, there hasn't been as many, but even 2 years ago, you had a blowout in the national championship game, Georgia over TCU. And last season, it wasn't a blowout, Michigan over Washington, but they pulled away and it wasn't really close at the end. So, this isn't abnormal. The SEC, can whine and complain all they want. Maybe Alabama is better than Indiana. I'd probably pick them to, but at some point, merit has to come into this. And Indiana won a lot more games than Alabama. You can only blame yourself for not making it in with 3 losses. So, not surprised by many of the results. I think it sets up a really good quarterfinal round. But yeah, I mean, you saw a bunch of people tweeting about it on Saturday night, where Michigan was mentioned like 20 times in the broadcast, which is kind of funny, the Ohio State-Tennessee game. And then people were tweeting like maybe Michigan could have won the SEC. I don't think that would have been the case, but they're really not that far off. I mean, I think they should have beat Indiana, and that's why I picked Notre Dame last week on our shows, because I saw Indiana in person. I wasn't impressed when they went up against some top-level talent. And, Notre Dame has similar talent to Michigan. And, so we see that result ends up being 10 points at the end, but it was, Notre Dame was in control of that game pretty much from start to finish, long touchdown run and everything else. But yeah, I mean, Michigan can get right back in it. And what would Michigan's record have been if they had Indiana's schedule? They might be in the playoff. I mean,
yeah.
So, you're going to get breaks. You're going to get these unbalanced schedules now because the conferences are so big, but it opens up an opportunity. But it does also make you think that Michigan should be in that playoff based on the caliber of team that we saw on Saturday night. More years than not. Really, 75% of the time, I would think.
Mhm.
Maybe 25% of the time they should be a top 4 team. We'll see what the Sharon Moore era is. I think maybe that's what the calculation would have been if Jim Harbaugh were still here. But, Michigan was not a very good team this year. Again, the Ohio State win does carry a lot of weight, the way we're talking about Michigan. And so does, a lot of the talent that's leaving helps that argument that Michigan's pretty close. But yeah, you get a schedule like Indiana's one year, and even if you're not that good, you may get in. Probably if you're Michigan, you end up being better, even with a tougher schedule some other years. So they'll be in this thing, I think, pretty quickly.
I think so too. Especially, I mean, I don't know what next year's team looks like yet, but that schedule's a lot more forgiving than. I mean, it's three. You might have the 3 best teams in the college football playoff were on Michigan's schedule this year, and an additional team in Indiana, on Michigan's schedule this past year. So, to me, I think two of my bigger takeaways is one, I don't know where, really, like in any playoff. Let's just use the NFL for example. They have 14. Are there more than 3 or 4 teams that can win a Super Bowl in the NFL this year? I don't think so. That's pretty typically the case. Are there more than 3 or 4 teams that can win a national title this year? Probably not. I think it would probably be Texas, Oregon, Ohio State. I would say Georgia, but they've got the quarterback injury. Notre Dame might be a dark horse, but really in any playoff, you don't have every team that's capable of winning the whole thing, but you earn your way. And I don't know how to standardize what qualifies a playoff team when you have 4 power conferences, you have unbalanced schedules, you have these different strength of schedule type things. I don't know how you say, set a hard and fast, like who belongs in, who doesn't. I think they got it right though. It's just, that's why you play the games.
We'll never know, but because all these hypothetical games, these hypothetical teams that have played poorly at multiple times this year would have hypothetically won big over all these other teams, apparently, or at least kept it closer with the teams that won than the teams that lost did. Once the playoff happens, you can pretend all you want that what was going to happen, but we all thought Alabama would go in and roll Oklahoma, right?
Well, this is why I'm so in favor of why they're doing it this way, because we don't have to have the conversations. Like, put them on the field and see what happens. I don't know that. I don't know that I don't know how the math would work, but are you mean to tell me that some of these people would rather watch, and you see people say, "Oh, it should have stayed 4," or "Oh, they only should have went to 8." You mean to tell me that watching a bowl game with some of these teams where half their team opts out and they're playing in front of a 60% full crowd in an NFL stadium does anything for you? It doesn't for me. So I like that we have games that matter. I like that we, I like that they're going to settle it on the field. And like I said, we're going to have 4 pretty good games. My other takeaway was on-campus games are awesome. I wish there were more of them in this playoff. It's a bummer it's only the first round. It's weird that, one of the benefits of being a top 4 team doesn't include hosting a game at home. You would think that would be one of the bigger advantages of it, but it's not. I can't wait until we cover a playoff game in December at the Big House. I think it'll be pretty darn cold, but I thought some of those environments are pretty cool.
They were. I mean, especially the cold ones. It was kind of weird watching so much cold weather football, and then when Clemson versus Texas came on, it was like completely different, but still a great atmosphere down there. It's awesome. So we'll be there in a few years when Michigan goes down there in September of 2027, right? So yeah, it's amazing atmospheres. I do agree. I think probably quarterfinals should be on campus, but at the same time, if I were a team going on the road, I'd much rather just play in a neutral site because those can be fun too. I think I've enjoyed that, but yeah, the on campus is great. When you saw the videos coming out of Notre Dame, on Friday morning, and people are already drinking and tailgating everything, and the atmosphere, you could almost watch a video of the tailgating scene and kind of feel the the tension surrounding that stadium, it kind of made you want to be a part of that. And I think that's part of it too. A lot of these teams are motivated by that, seeing the opportunity having this playoff, wanting to get there and knowing that it's attainable, because there are 12 teams now. Some teams that never would have sniffed the 14 playoff will get the chance to get in, like in Indiana. Tennessee never made it, right? I mean, Boise, SMU, all sorts of teams that are in there for the first time. So it's going to be fun going forward. I think there'll be changes to the format. I think they'll expand in a few years. But I think we're on a good path with the playoff. I do think they should, again, the buys should go to the top 4 ranked teams, because Penn State ironically gets an easier path by losing to Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. Same thing. Texas has a better path as the loser of the SEC championship game. So they probably need to fix that. But other than that, I love the format.